The Luka Doncic trade to the Los Angeles Lakers sent shockwaves through the NBA community. It wasn't just a blockbuster move, it was a decision that left analysts, fans, and even some players stunned. Luka was the cornerstone of the Mavericks franchise, a generational talent with the potential to go down as one of the greatest players in NBA history. Trades of this magnitude often spark debates over which team came out on top. But in this case, there was an overwhelming consensus. The Dallas Mavericks lost the trade. Luka was only 25 years old, already a five-time first-team All-NBA player, and had led the Mavericks to two Western Conference Finals appearances. Typically, teams spend decades searching for a player of his caliber, and when they find one, they do everything possible to build around them. Instead, Dallas decided to move on from him in exchange for an aging and injury-prone 31-year-old star whose prime appeared to be behind him. It was a baffling move, and even those who tried to justify it struggled to make a compelling case. Some analysts, like Kendrick Perkins, attempted to argue that Dallas had won the trade, but the logic behind such claims was thin. The reaction within the league was equally telling. Neither LeBron James nor Anthony Davis had any idea that the Lakers were acquiring Luka until the deal was finalized. That kind of secrecy is unusual for a transaction of this magnitude. Generally, when a franchise-altering move is on the horizon, major players are consulted. But in this case, the trade happened so swiftly and quietly that even those directly impacted were caught off guard. Luka was only 25 years old, already a five-time first-team All-NBA player, and had led the Mavericks to two Western Conference Finals appearances. Typically, teams spend decades searching for a player of his caliber, and when they find one, they do everything possible to build around them. Instead, Dallas decided to move on from him in exchange for an aging and injury-prone 31-year-old star whose prime appeared to be behind him. It was a baffling move, and even those who tried to justify it struggled to make a compelling case. Some analysts, like Kendrick Perkins, attempted to argue that Dallas had won the trade, but the logic behind such claims was thin. The reaction within the league was equally telling. Neither LeBron James nor Anthony Davis had any idea that the Lakers were acquiring Luka until the deal was finalized. That kind of secrecy is unusual for a transaction of this magnitude. Generally, when a franchise-altering move is on the horizon, major players are consulted. But in this case, the trade happened so swiftly and quietly that even those directly impacted were caught off guard. But while the trade itself seemed abrupt, the reality is that the signs had been there for some time. This wasn't just a basketball decision, it was a culmination of deeper issues within the Mavericks organization. Internal frustrations with Luka's conditioning, growing concerns about his attitude, and financial considerations under the team's new ownership all contributed to the decision. While most people were shocked in the moment, a closer look at the past few years reveals that the writing had been on the wall for a while. One of the biggest underlying factors in the Mavericks' decision to trade Luka Doncic was his long-standing struggle with conditioning. Throughout his time in Dallas, Luka's weight was a constant point of concern within the organization. Despite his incredible talent, the Mavericks' front office and coaching staff repeatedly urged him to adopt a more disciplined approach to his fitness, but he never fully committed to it. Over the years, his weight steadily increased, and by 2024, reports suggested he was pushing 270 pounds, making him one of the heaviest players in the entire NBA. This issue wasn't new. As early as 2021, ESPN's Tim McMahon had reported that Luka had already gained 35 pounds since entering the league. Luka himself admitted, "I had a long summer, I had the Olympics, took 3 weeks off, and I relaxed a little bit. Maybe too much." While his skill level was undeniable, his physical condition fluctuated dramatically, leading to concerns about his long-term durability. The Mavericks grew increasingly frustrated with Luka's lack of commitment to peak physical shape. While other superstars like LeBron James and Kobe Bryant treated their bodies as their most valuable asset, investing millions into training, recovery, and nutrition. Luka often appeared indifferent. His reluctance to show up to training camp in elite shape became a pattern. In fact, he had missed the start of the last 2 training camps due to conditioning-related issues. Injuries also started creeping in. While Luka had been relatively durable early in his career, by 2024, his fitness struggles began affecting his availability. That season, he had already missed 18 games and counting due to a lingering calf strain. The Mavericks were worried that if he didn't change his habits, his body would break down sooner rather than later. Dallas had spent years trying to get through to Luka about his conditioning, but nothing seemed to work. The breaking point would come when assistant GM Michael Finley took a beer from Luka's hand during the Mavericks' post-game celebration in the 2024 Western Conference Finals. It was a small but symbolic one that underscored the ongoing battle between Luka's personal habits and the organization's expectations. The front office ultimately decided that if Luka wasn't going to take their concerns seriously, they couldn't justify committing to him long-term, especially with a $345 million Supermax extension looming. His fitness issues weren't the only reason he was traded, but they were a significant factor in why Dallas felt it was time to move on. The first major sign that the Mavericks were growing frustrated with Luka Doncic surfaced during the 2024 Western Conference Finals. After a dominant series win against the Minnesota Timberwolves, the team was celebrating in the locker room. Luka, exhausted but elated, leaned against the wall with a cold beer in his hand, his father standing beside him. It was a brief moment of relaxation after a grueling playoff battle, until assistant GM Michael Finley stepped in. Without hesitation, Finley casually snatched the beer from Luka's hand, effectively killing the celebratory mood. At first glance, it might seem like an insignificant moment, but Luka's reaction told a deeper story. He didn't look shocked or confused. He simply shrugged, as if this was something he had seen coming. His expression wasn't one of surprise, but of resignation, as if to say, "Seriously? After everything I just did on the court, I can't even have a beer with my dad?" This wasn't an isolated event. The Mavericks had long been pushing Luka to adopt a more professional approach to his conditioning and overall habits. While the beer itself wasn't the issue, it symbolized a larger concern within the organization: Luka's lack of discipline when it came to maintaining his body at an elite level. Over the years, the front office had implored him to improve his fitness and make healthier choices, but the changes never came. The fact that this interaction happened in front of cameras only made it more significant. It exposed a power struggle between the team and its franchise player, one that had likely been brewing behind closed doors for years. Finley's decision to take the beer away wasn't about optics. It was about frustration. The Mavericks were tired of seeing Luka ignore their advice, and this moment served as a public glimpse into their growing impatience. At the time, few people recognized it as a warning sign, but in hindsight, it was one of the first clear indications that Dallas was losing faith in their superstar. While the moment itself wasn't enough to trigger a trade, it was part of a larger pattern that made the organization question whether they could truly build a long-term future around Luka.